Hi, this is the first episode of Just a Jeju Girl podcast, and thank you so much for tuning in. And if you have tuned in, then I'm honestly curious about how did you get here and what made you tune in here. So thank you so much. And since it's the first episode, I wanted to talk about why I made this podcast, and plus the very first topic, which is about being an islander. So basically, the reason I started this podcast, I know nobody ever asked, but since it's the very beginning of the podcast, I think it would be nice to share about my motivation to start it. And I think I wrote the description is that I am such a yapper. I love talking, but it doesn't mean that I love communicating. I love communicating. It sounds weird. Yes, I love communicating, but sometimes I wish that I could speak on my own, all day long, without being judged. Sometimes when you go through work, when you go through a lot of stuff in your life, you get quite exhausted about keep questioning and asking whether I said it right, or you keep on questioning about, am I saying things right, or would these people would hate it or like it if I say this. So it is part of social skill, but sometimes you want to talk on your own, but it's weird, isn't it? Just talking on your own endlessly, or on your own in your own room. But podcast is made for this kind of people. Podcasts let you just speak on your own endlessly as long as you can and talk about anything, which is the beautiful part of podcast. So I've been dreamt about launching my own podcast quite a long time ago, actually, 2-3 years ago, because I loved sharing my thoughts and I loved people talking about their opinion. And I think it came from my upbringing is that in my family, I remember we used to have 3 hours dinner time. It doesn't mean we eat the food 3 hours long. That would be weird. But we would have dinner for 30-40 minutes. And then while we're eating, we would have a debate. We would talk about everything. Because both of my mom and dad, they were kind of an intellect. They knew a lot of stuff, and they read a lot of books, and they had a lot of opinion. They had amazing insight and narratives about life, history, philosophy. And since my dad studied mechanical engineering, he knew a lot of things about engineering and science and stuff. So because of that, because of the upbringing, to me, sharing thoughts about your life values and culture, all sorts of things, the recent news, was a very natural thing. But since I became a grown-up, God, it's really cringe to say that I'm a grown-up, but yeah, since you become a grown-up, since you get independent from your own family, but once you get out of the nest, you kind of realise that things are quite different out of this world, out of your own world, or out of your own comfort zone. And I realised that it's not that normal to have an environment to fully accept as who you are, fully accepting your opinions, even if you're families. So I really wanted to have that kind of environment outside of my family where I can speak endlessly to that person and communicate and sharing each other's thoughts and opinions and narratives all day long. And it doesn't mean I never had that kind of friend or partner. Of course I did, but I thought podcast would be a great tool to speak about my life and my thoughts, and also to enhance my English skills. You might heard from my accent. My native language isn't English, and actually I'm a South Korean, and the name of my podcast, which is Just a Jeju Girl, Jeju is the name of my hometown. It is called Jeju Isalnd, Jeju-do in Korean, and I was born and raised there. So I'm very, very Korean, who was born and raised in Jeju Isalnd and went to university in Busan, South Korea, and now working in Seoul, the capital city of South Korea. And my accent may sound a bit weird to you. Not weird, but it's kind of mixed, isn't it? So I've lived in the UK for 2 years when I was 13, 14. So year 7 to year 9. It's not 13, is it? I'm really not sure. So I've lived in the UK, and to me, I was always enthusiastic about English in general. I loved English, especially when speaking English was an amazing hobby, I would say. Yeah, it's part of my life. I love speaking English, maybe more than I speak Korean. It is, of course, energy draining compared to Korean, which is my native language, but I kind of felt like I kind of get to have a slightly different character when I speak English, and sometimes it feels great, doesn't it? Like, it feels like you have like a secondary character, secondary personality that you wouldn't able to realize if I keep speaking in Korean. Well, I'm fundamentally the same person, but in English, I think I do change a bit, and the interesting part is I get more contentious when I speak English. I'm more open to expose my own thoughts and narratives and share my thoughts in English, and I think that means I think it's from my hobby, which is listening to podcasts. It's not even a hobby, it's really part of my life. Once I open my eyes in the morning, first thing I do is turn on the podcast and get ready to get to work. It is my everyday life stuff that I simply can't survive without it. And because most of my podcasts that I listen to, it's all like self-investment, self-development, interviews with intellects and famous people, all those amazing people. And because of that, like, I'm so used to listening to people speaking about their thoughts, their life. So because of that, I think I've learned how to talk about my opinion, what's in my head, in English more than Korean, because I barely listen to Korean podcasts. I don't know why, but maybe because, I don't know if you know this, but like, you wouldn't know it if you're like Korean, but podcast content really isn't a thing in Korea right now. Like, I thought it would develop a lot. I've started listening to podcasts since I entered university, when I was the first grade of university student, when I was like 18, 19. And the reason I got to know the existence of podcasts is because I studied architect, and being being an architect student means that you're gonna like sit down in front of a huge screen all day long, and you can kind of have your second screen on, like Netflix on, YouTube on, while you're working simultaneously, but personally it was almost impossible to work on my project and simultaneously look at Netflix or YouTube. So one of my colleagues recommended to listen to podcast. There's a lot of content in it. It basically talks about everything from news, music, drama, cinema. So because of that, I started to put on podcasts when I was working in an architecture project. And that meant that I would listen to podcast almost every day and all day, because being an architect student is tough. Like, you are always on your computer working, and I've done that for 5 years. But strangely, at that time, I barely listened to English podcast. Don't know why. I think I was less of an enthusiast regarding English back that time. I loved it, but I still loved it, but like it had a different vibe compared to me right now, my relationship with English at that time. So I think I've been listening to English podcasts mostly like 3 years ago, and it completely changed it about how I accept things, how I demonstrate my thoughts in English, basically. So yeah, because I was so addicted to it, I really can't survive without podcasts, really. Like, I think it got more important than music right now, because I just love the, like, I just love the fact that you can listen to podcast for free. Like, can you imagine like all those intellects, all those famous, amazing people, like incredibly, ridiculously smart people talking to you for hours and hours without a charge. Can you imagine? Like, we are living in a society where you cannot, like, money means air, basically. But like, podcast is giving you so much information, so many amazing insights regarding where you can implement to a lot of things in life, and it's giving you for free. Like, God, I'm getting excited even to talking about the concept of podcast. I'm sorry. So yeah, and I always loved it, and since I love talking and sharing my thoughts, one of the person that I was talking to at that time strongly recommended me to have my own podcast, to launch my own podcast. And firstly, I thought, not a bad idea, because like, communicating requires a lot of social energy and social skills, right? But talking on your own, you wouldn't have like a fear to be judged, or like you wouldn't have to care. Like, it sounds a bit weird, but you don't really have to care about that person's reaction. You just have to keep talking. You can just keep talking, right? So yeah, so these are the reasons. Like, firstly, I just love podcast. Always loved it. I always wanted to have one, and a lot of people recommended me to post it on a line. And secondly, I wanted to enhance and maintain my English skills because I love English. So yeah, these are the reasons. God, I've been talking about my motivations to launch my podcast for 15 minutes already. But let's see how it goes. So this is the background information of my own podcast. And today's topic is basically about being a Jeju girl, literally, like my own title. I always think a lot of, like, most of people's fundamental identity comes from their upbringings, where they're from. At least it's highly, highly influenced, isn't it? I once went to one of the very, very, very famous painter. Oh, it's so embarrassing. I forgot his name. Chagall. Like, if there was any French person listening to my pronunciation, I'm so sorry, but yeah, the Chagall. And I didn't know it, but he's from like one of the Russian villages, like really countryside Russian villages. I didn't know, I thought he was French, but he is originally from like very countryside Russian villages. And in the exhibition, he keeps on like emphasizing what that village shaped him as a person. And he keeps on like painting about his own hometown, his own upbringing, and he keeps on painting and talking about how wonderful it was and how huge impact it had on his life. And I resonated to his thoughts and his paintings so much, because even though I lived in UK for 2 years and plus I've also lived in Japan for 1 year. So yeah, like 2 years in the UK, 1 year in Japan, and 5 years in Busan, and almost like 2 years. No, like almost 2 years in Seoul. Still, my the most important fundamental identity on my own is Jeju Isalnd. And I don't know it is for everyone, but I figured out that not many people feel this kind of way about their hometown. Even among Jeju people. Like, many of my good friends are from Jeju Isalnd, like high school friends, or like middle school friends, or whatever. Those people are in Jeju, and I realised that not many Jeju locals feel this way. But to me, like, being a Jeju local, like being a person who was originally from Jeju Isalnd, to me it meant everything, right? Like, yes, like, life is demanding, but it can sometimes get rigorous. But to me, like, life in Jeju was so beautiful. It was amazing. It really means everything. It just depicts everything about myself, Jeju Isalnd. And even now I keep on asking myself, like, do I really want to live outside of Jeju Isalnd? Do I really want to? Anyways, so I wanted to talk about, like, being an islander, how it means, and I was born and raised in Jeju Isalnd, and both of my parents are, of course, and all of my ancestors, of course not every all of them, but like at least not the close families I know of, none of my close relatives are from outside of Jeju. So all of my life, all of my families are in Jeju. Even my ancestors. I know my mum's ancestors were deported from the mainland, South Korea, long time ago, like generations and generations ago. But except that, like, yeah, I'm the product of indigenous Jeju people. So yeah, like, during 20 years living in Jeju Isalnd, like before I grew up, like went to university in Busan, there was stuff that was really obvious and so true when I was living in Jeju. Like, for example, there's no transportation except bus in Jeju Isalnd. You pretty have very less options you either take a car, you either take a bus. That's it. There's no train. There's not even a highway, of course. So in 1 hour, you pretty much can go everywhere in Jeju. Like everywhere. I literally means everywhere. Like, I know that it takes about like 2 hours, like 3 hours if you want to go around the island. Like a donut. Like 2 hours, 3 hours. And it's one of the things that none of the local thing would ever even think about doing it, you know? So, yeah. Yeah, that was obvious for me. It was so obvious for me to have no train in my life. All you can take was bus. That's why having a car is so mandatory in Jeju Island if you want to survive there. It really is. So, yeah, no train, of course. Just an airplane if you want to go to main island. So, like, to Jeju locals, like, airplane means, like, public transportation. It's nothing like holiday vibe. It's public transportation. I mean, it literally is, but especially to Jeju people, like, there's no excitement in their face in the airport if you're a Jeju person. Like, in the airport, you can literally spot the real Jeju locals in just seconds because there's zero excitement in their faces. So, yeah, there's one of the island thing. And secondly, like, Jeju people have kind of a different group thinking compared to mainland. Like, since I moved to Seoul, I've discovered that life in the island and life in Seoul is completely different. Like, life in Seoul is like, you're always kind of hustling. You're always striving. Like, let's go for the best. Like, you can cultivate this skills, you can cultivate this ability on your own. Like, you can always, yeah, like, even like people have like multiple jobs to survive and they're always concerned about money. But Jeju, like, it is different. Like, people are more chill. Yes, we don't earn a lot of money. Like, if you see the pool, Jeju always hits the rock bottom of the average salary of the nation, South Korea. We don't earn much, but things are more chill in Jeju Island. And I really want to say, like, you can't generalize everything via what I say, because I'm just sharing the personal information, like, experience as living in Jeju. And I don't know what the other people will say. Like, for example, those people who moved to Jeju Island after living decades in the mainland would feel completely different to what I say. But yeah, those are the differences. And beside Jeju, I've discovered that I've been living in Ireland most of my life. Like, come on, the UK, Japan, Jeju Island. So, I've been living in the islands, the island nations. And yeah, I really am an islander. And to me, like, okay, I was talking to my friend who is Swedish, and he said, I went to Copenhagen, Denmark, by train. And to me, like, it sounds so exciting. The fact that you can go to abroad, the fact that you can go to foreign country by train is crazy. I know some people will find it really funny and will find, like, a bit childish for me to say this, but, like, the fact that you can take train to go to foreign country is crazy. And as a South Korean, it's almost impossible to expect you could go to abroad by train, because technically South Korea is an island nation, because we have a wonderful neighbor, like, in the north. So yeah, like, living in the island nations and from Jeju Island, really depicted most of my personality and my own history. And living in the UK and living in Japan as well. And maybe kind of made me kind of isolated in a way. But yeah, maybe I am destined to live in the island nation. Where's next? I'm really wondering about what's next. Because I know for my own fate, right? I know I was born to kind of move in, move out, and move somewhere else. Like I know that I'm gonna be moving everywhere, from places to places, and I'm always also wondering about where is the next. And if it isn't island nations, then that's fantastic. If it is again island nation, fantastic again. So in this podcast, I think I'm gonna talk a lot about Jeju and my life in Ireland. And yeah, I'm personally pursuing a podcast that you can just listen to while you're working without thinking too much, if you know what I mean. Like a podcast that you can just turn on and just, you could do whatever you can, like from your work or scrolling down Instagram and doing the dishes and overall. Like I want to pursue that kind of podcast that you don't really have to concentrate that much, where you have to kind of use your brain so much. So I'll keep working on that. And I will keep coming up with interesting topics to talk about. And I'm gonna open my email, and I'll be really looking forward to your comments and your reviews. So let's see next week, shall we? Thank you for listening. Please subscribe and give me emails or give me comments. So thank you for listening. Bye.